Okay, I'm going to continue on with our misunderstandings, inspirational misunderstandings, because I wanted to talk about this. Because I have another one that I want to talk about. So we're going to start with this guy. This man wrote up here, neurodivergence equals noticing patterns that scare everyone else. And I said, yeah, that's every human being is capable of noticing patterns. That's the purpose of human cognition. It's capable of that. And I said, that's just basic human cognition that all humans are capable of. It's often labeled as a special or atypical states of cognition before understanding catches up to awareness. Because again, when someone is unfamiliar or unusual, they get labeled as something novel or unique. And so this person is basically stating neurodivergence is specialized to people that have the capacity to perceive patterns beyond the surface layer. And I said, no, that's normal. Everyone can do that. He says, I know many of people that can do things most cannot even conceptualize, let alone do. Because again, he's trying to reassert, hey, there are people that are special and extraordinary and some people that are irrelevant and mundane. That's what he's trying to assert here by stating that. And so I come back at him and say, to utilize the word know implies complete mastery and understanding of a concept to the level where understanding can be explained regardless of age, origin, belief, ethnicity, religion, background, etc. The difference between what cannot even be conceptualized and let alone do becomes detrimental when ignorance is still present. Because I was trying to utilize his own words to demonstrate, hey, this is what occurs when you're unaware of how to perceive yourself, right? To be able to step out of your personal experience and your immersive experience of what I am personally experiencing, right? This living existence, to be able to step outside of that and perceive myself in third person, third party, is what enables a greater level of observation and depth of understanding to arise. So he says, the only people that experience detriment are the ignorant, which is their choice. Any of those I was referring to when it comes to extraordinary capability have zero care or desire to prove anything. They don't need to. Meaning the gifted will continue being so, and the ignorant will remain. The wonderful thing is that alike the universe, DNA isn't entirely fixed either. Epigenetics can be toggled, meaning ignorance is a choice, as I said. Again, can you perceive how we're both having two different conversations at two different levels here? And so I write back to him, yes, and I'm trying to make you aware of yours, but you don't seem to want to perceive it. You are correct. The gifted will continue being so, and the ignorant will remain. Because I'm trying to get him to say, hey, you are gifted. You are gifted. You are as talented as the people that you're talking about. And I have no reason to have to try to articulate to him to make him aware of his ignorance, yet I'm doing that. The ignorant will remain. I agree. And so he goes on to say, difference and mutation, neurodivergence in genetic code is not basic human cognition. Unless you're saying something that I've missed, really isn't anything I'm not wanting to perceive. I don't know how else to make him aware, hey, you're unaware of your ignorance. I'm trying to make you aware of how to perceive your ignorance. But again, he continues to state that neurodivergence is not basic human cognition. Can you see that? He's trying to create the hierarchy and stratification, being like, no, some people are neurodivergent and some aren't. Not everyone can do this. And I don't like that you're trying to say that everyone can do this. And so I broke it down to him just to try to make him aware, right? So I say, your first sentence demonstrates ignorance because you are unable to step outside the cognitive framework in which you have built to perceive the world. Again, he is stating, right, neurodivergence is not normal human cognition. He refuses to leave that mindset, that belief. And it's true. Neurodivergence is extraordinary. People that are able to perceive patterns. Yet it seems as if he wants to make it be like certain people are unable to do this. And I'm saying, yes, they can. Then I say, call it personal internal prescription for sight. You're currently on a nearsighted prescription from my observations. I was trying to invoke a state of irritation, so he tunes in, right? Tries to pay attention more. So then he said, it's not a perspective, it's objective fact. You said something blatantly wrong, and the only reason I'm commenting is because this is a subject that's been neglected for eons. I don't care what you think. What I'm sharing is for those that are seeking clarity for something they've likely never had answers for. Good day. Okay. Can we all perceive how the misunderstanding occurred? And he doubled down, saying, no, what you said is factually incorrect. Not everyone is capable of perceiving patterns to a greater depth beyond the surface layer. Only certain people are capable of that. And you saying that everyone's able to do it is wrong. Blatantly wrong. So, okay. And so I just said, thank you for participating, especially with your word utilization. Perhaps you may find yourself achieving the acknowledgement you desire in the near future for your astute level of knowledge. I wouldn't delete your comments on this thread if I were you. But, because again, I wanted to utilize this as a learning opportunity for other people to perceive. And I have no idea if he deleted it or not. But that's where I was going with that. Can everyone perceive now, though, how easy it is to be unable to perceive past the surface layer, right? We were clearly having two conversations and the person was unable to perceive it. But we're going to switch over now to my, because I have a couple minutes left, switch over to something I wrote, because there's like a feature on YouTube that is called Post. And it's like a blog. And so I've been using it as, when I discovered it, I used it as like a diary. I use it as my personal diary. And so this is what I wrote. And someone wrote back something quite extraordinary. And so I wanted to read that to everyone. So, that's kind of hard to read. Captain's log, stardate celebrations. I utilized the emotion to express how I feel for the date. And so I said, it appears the nuances of my cognition are beginning to propagate beyond the realms of what is defined as imperceivable. I do absolutely love when the thresholds of fear and discomfort are laid barren at the altars of existence, although I'm uncertain if those demonstrating such actions, such reverent acts, are aware of its extent. The paradigm often described as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints appears to be the most forthcoming with their awareness, however, to be determined on their next move as far as demonstrating the astute level of understanding I have most graciously boasted and proclaimed as a foundational cornerstone to their masterpiece. I suppose it's not my fault this specific paradigm has demonstrated something rather unique compared to others, although it is apparent they're unaware of the extent of the word extraordinarily reverent when applied to themselves. I am curious what they will do next, especially from those defined as leadership. The echelons of the concept of leadership are most certainly intriguing, to say the least. Because if anyone perceives, right, the teachings of the leadership, of how they interpret the beautiful texts and doctrines of within the paradigm, are reflected by the followers, the people that go to these places to receive these words of wisdom and understanding. And so I'll be curious to see again, because some of the comments and some of the actions that I'm perceiving lately have been very unique. And so I'm curious to what's going to happen. And so someone responded back, really awesome. This person wrote, I often ponder the origins of beginnings. Each beginning has something that started it. Birth isn't the beginning, but a transition. Ideas and concepts to real life objects. Movement had organization before them. The matter around me to the atomic and beyond, has it always existed? When did time start? What is intelligence? When did God began to be? Oftentimes in these musings, I find a reverent reflection on existence, a gratitude for the verb to be, and the ability to change and improve, to become. How awesome is that? This person basically, because I believe they're a member of LDS, but they stepped outside, right? They didn't have to necessarily invoke the terminology of their paradigm, but they just appealed to the human level cognition, the human layer of where everyone has these questions, right? When did time begin? What is existence? How did I get here? What is the concept of purpose? Where did the movement arise? When did God become to be? Like, right? When did God become aware? When did awareness become aware? These are all beautiful things and provoking, very thought-provoking questions. And this person, right, every paradigm in the human cognition utilizes those underlying questions in order to pursue understanding. And it's extraordinary, every single one. And so I wrote back, very well articulated. Can I scroll? Oh, I can't scroll down. Very well articulated. The questions you ask are ones every human has pondered or been curious about. I will say the answers to all those questions are available. However, they're only perceivable to the mind who is ready to understand the nuances of what it means to be aware from the perspective of existence and not merely from the perspective of simply being human. Although I will say being able to understand the paradigms of human cognition definitely help with perceiving beyond the surface of observation. What I was essentially saying there is the questions that he's asking, or he or her is asking, they're available. The answers are available. However, you have to be able to first perceive the totality of what human cognition, how they define and perceive those fundamental movement patterns that all of humanity has access to explaining and describing. Because like they stated, they talked about movement had organization before them. Movements had organization before them, as in before meaning was assigned, before understanding occurred, movement patterns were going on. And so in order to perceive the full extent of those movement patterns that create what is defined as existence, then you need to be able to understand and perceive the totality of the paradigms that humanity currently utilizes in order to explain those movement patterns. And then the answers are right there in front of you. Every single book, every book that is sacred text, everything that is created by a human being is a sacred and reverent puzzle piece to explaining and answering those questions that are defined, that have been posed by that person. Every human mind has had. Oh, it's so beautiful. The extent of consciousness and the concept of consciousness and being able to create these questions, to be aware of even the definitions of what is considered reverent or sacred, to be able to even understand the words that I'm articulating, the sounds that I'm creating right now. It is absolutely extraordinary that this person is perceiving that. And one of the things I wanted to highlight and why I talked about LDS specifically, because I've had the most engagement with them. And again, that framework has built into it to address fear from how it's structured with their